Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Robert Adams, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Petty Officer Benjamin Hale. We warmly welcome Brigadier General Sani and Captain Rezwan, representing the Malaysian Armed Forces and their accompanying delegation. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial and students on behalf of Loreto Nedlands from Nedlands, Western Australia. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. Students, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Lieutenant Roy Cumestree Trout. Roy Trout was born in Brisbane on the 27th of January, 1895, the eldest son of Walter and Margaret Trout's 9 children. His family were well-known butchers in the Red Hill district. Roy was an able student and was granted a scholarship to Brisbane Grammar School, where he passed the Queensland Junior and Senior examinations. He studied science at Queensland University and went on to work as a chemist in the State Agricultural Library. While at grammar school, his interest had been sparked in the military, and by 1913, he was serving as a commissioned officer in the senior cadets, later transferring to the Light Horse. In March 1916, a little over 18 months after the outbreak of the First World War, Roy Trout was accepted for a course of instruction at the Central Flying School at Point Cook in Victoria. There, he obtained his pilot certificate and had passed the military wings examination to become a lieutenant in No. 2 Flying Squadron of the Australian Flying Corps. He left Australia for active service overseas with the squadron on the 25th of October, 1916. Lieutenant Trout arrived in England shortly after Christmas Day, 1916, and almost immediately was sent to Carlton, Lincolnshire, where he undertook training in night flying. He went on to be temporarily attached to the Royal Flying Corps as a delivery pilot, still based in England. On the 27th of July, 1917, Lieutenant Trout was given an RE-8 to fly to Lymm in Kent. Captain Seaveright of the Royal Flying Corps described how Trout took off in a westerly direction, and after reaching a height of about 500 feet, one wing appeared to drop, and I saw the machine nosedive towards the ground. Trout's aircraft vanished behind a factory, and so Seaveright and Lieutenant Charles Stevens took a motorcar to the site of the accident immediately. They discovered factory staff putting out the burning wreckage and the body of Lieutenant Roy Trout still in the cockpit. He had tried to pull the plane out of a nosedive so hard that he had broken off the fitting that controlled the plane's elevators. A court of inquiry determined that Trout met his death through inexperience in flying the RE-8 machine. The commanding officer of RFC's Northern Training Brigade later claimed that, contrary to the finding of the court, which states he had not flown RE-8s before, he had flown 1 hour and 55 minutes on RE-8 machines, which is only 5 minutes short of the time that used to be necessary for an officer to proceed overseas on this type. And in addition to this, he had 12 hours more experience than other pilots ordered overseas. I consider this officer was competent to fly this machine from Coventry to Lymm, especially in view of the fact that he had done a similar journey. The remains of Lieutenant Roy Trout were interred in the Coventry Cemetery with full military honours. Today, his grave bears the epitaph, "He gave his bright and true young life that we might live, Mother." Roy Trout was 22 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving during the First World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lieutenant Roy Cumestree Trout, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
If you are able, please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, we thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.